Question 1. Regulatory review indicates that International Distribution Services, Royal Mail, is considering the adoption of a new, advanced parcel tracking technology that promises enhanced real-time visibility for both the company and its customers. However, initial internal assessments suggest potential challenges with system integration, staff training requirements, and the need for significant customer education. Given these considerations, which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations for service continuity, customer welfare, and responsible technological adoption? Option A. Implement the new tracking technology in a phased manner, starting with pilot programs in select regions, coupled with comprehensive staff training and proactive customer communication regarding the changes and benefits. Option B. Prioritize the technical functionality of the new tracking system above all else, ensuring it is fully operational from a software perspective, and assume that staff and customers will adapt to its use with minimal support. Option C. Delay the implementation of the new tracking technology indefinitely until all potential integration issues are fully resolved and staff are completely proficient to avoid any risk of service disruption. Option D. Immediately deploy the new tracking technology across all operations to gain a competitive advantage and demonstrate innovation, addressing any integration or training issues reactively as they arise. The correct answer is D. Immediately deploy the new tracking technology across all operations to gain a competitive advantage and demonstrate innovation, addressing any integration or training issues reactively as they arise. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and customer service expectations. The core difficulty lies in determining the appropriate response when a new, potentially disruptive technology is introduced, impacting established processes and potentially customer experience. Royal Mail, as a public service provider, operates under a strict regulatory framework that prioritizes service quality, fairness, and data protection. A hasty or ill-considered implementation of new technology could lead to service disruptions, customer complaints, and breaches of regulatory obligations. Careful judgment is required to assess the technology's readiness, its impact on existing workflows, and the adequacy of staff training and customer communication. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, controlled rollout of the new tracking technology, accompanied by comprehensive staff training and clear customer communication. This aligns with best practices for technological adoption in regulated industries. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of regulatory requirements for service continuity and customer satisfaction. A phased rollout allows for early identification and mitigation of issues, minimizing widespread disruption. Thorough training ensures staff can effectively use the new system and address customer queries, upholding service standards. Proactive customer communication manages expectations and builds trust, a key ethical consideration for a service provider. This approach demonstrates a commitment to responsible innovation, prioritizing customer welfare and regulatory adherence throughout the transition. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the technology immediately across all services without adequate testing or training represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach prioritizes speed over safety and compliance, risking widespread service disruption and customer dissatisfaction, which could contravene service-level agreements and consumer protection regulations. It also fails to adequately prepare staff, potentially leading to errors and a decline in service quality. Adopting a wait-and-see approach, delaying implementation indefinitely due to potential issues, is also professionally unsound. This inaction can lead to a competitive disadvantage and failure to meet evolving customer expectations, potentially contravening the regulatory duty to provide an efficient and modern service. It also misses opportunities for innovation that could benefit customers and the organization. Focusing solely on the technical aspects of the new system, without considering its impact on staff and customers, demonstrates a narrow, non-holistic approach. This oversight can lead to user resistance, operational inefficiencies, and a failure to meet the broader service delivery obligations mandated by regulators. It neglects the human element crucial for successful service provision and compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should employ a structured decision-making process that integrates risk assessment, stakeholder impact analysis, and regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Thoroughly evaluating the new technology's capabilities and potential risks. 2. Assessing the impact on all stakeholders, including staff, customers, and operational processes. 3. Consulting relevant regulatory guidelines and legal frameworks to ensure compliance. 4. Developing a phased implementation plan with clear milestones, training protocols, and communication strategies. 5. Establishing feedback mechanisms to monitor performance and address issues proactively. 6. Prioritizing customer welfare and service continuity throughout the adoption process. Question 2. The audit findings indicate that a recently implemented cost-saving measure in the sorting process has led to an increase in the misdirection of mail, potentially impacting delivery times and customer satisfaction. What is the most appropriate next step for the management team to take? Option A. Immediately revert the sorting process to its previous state to eliminate the misdirection, without further investigation into the root cause or the effectiveness of the new measure. Option B. Accept the increased misdirection as a minor operational inefficiency, provided the overall cost savings are significant, and monitor the situation without immediate corrective action. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the sorting process. Assess the impact of the misdirection against Royal Mail's service quality obligations under the Postal Services Act 2011 and Ofcom's General Conditions of Service, and develop a plan to rectify the issue and prevent recurrence. Option D. Implement a communication campaign to inform customers about potential delivery delays due to the new sorting process, focusing on managing expectations rather than addressing the operational flaw. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the sorting process. Assess the impact of the misdirection against Royal Mail's service quality obligations under the Postal Services Act 2011 and Ofcom's General Conditions of Service, and develop a plan to rectify the issue and prevent recurrence. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between operational efficiency and regulatory compliance. Royal Mail, as a regulated entity, must ensure its processes adhere to the Postal Services Act 2011 and associated Ofcom regulations. The audit findings highlight a potential gap where cost-saving measures might inadvertently compromise service standards or data integrity, which are key areas of regulatory oversight. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for financial prudence with the imperative to maintain a reliable and compliant postal service. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the identified process, a detailed risk assessment against relevant regulatory requirements, specifically those pertaining to service quality, data handling, and consumer protection under the Postal Services Act 2011 and Ofcom's General Conditions of Service, and the development of a remediation plan. This plan must not only address the immediate audit finding, but also implement controls to prevent recurrence. This aligns with the principles of good governance and regulatory adherence, ensuring that operational changes do not lead to breaches of statutory obligations or a decline in service standards expected by consumers and mandated by the regulator. It demonstrates a proactive and responsible approach to managing operational risks within a regulated environment. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings as minor operational inefficiencies without a formal assessment. This fails to acknowledge the potential for even seemingly small deviations to escalate into significant compliance issues or service failures, which could attract regulatory scrutiny and penalties. It represents a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the spirit of regulatory oversight. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a superficial fix without understanding the root cause or the broader implications for regulatory compliance. This might involve a quick change that appears to address the finding, but does not fundamentally alter the process or introduce robust controls. This approach is likely to lead to the same or similar issues re-emerging, demonstrating a failure to implement sustainable solutions and a lack of commitment to continuous improvement and compliance. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings above all else, even if it means accepting a higher risk of non-compliance. This demonstrates a failure to understand the potential financial and reputational damage of regulatory breaches, which can far outweigh short-term cost savings. It also indicates a potential ethical lapse in prioritizing financial targets over the integrity of the service and consumer protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals in a regulated industry like Royal Mail must adopt a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Acknowledging and investigating all audit findings promptly. 2. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the area under review. 3. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment to determine the potential impact of the finding on compliance, service quality, and customer experience. 4. Developing and implementing proportionate and effective remediation plans that address root causes and include preventative measures. 5. Documenting the entire process for audit and regulatory purposes. This systematic approach ensures that operational decisions are informed by regulatory obligations and ethical considerations, fostering a culture of compliance and accountability. Question 3. Assessment of the most appropriate action for a postal operative encountering an undeliverable package at a business address where the recipient has moved and no forwarding information is available, and the operative is under pressure to meet daily delivery targets. Option A. Deliver the package to a neighboring business without confirmation or authorization. Option B. Leave the package outside the business premises in a visible location, hoping someone from the business will find it. Option C. Dispose of the package discreetly to save time and avoid delays in completing the delivery route. Option D. Follow the established procedure for returning undeliverable mail, including updating the tracking system and placing the item in the designated return mail stream. Correct answer is D. Follow the established procedure for returning undeliverable mail, including updating the tracking system and placing the item in the designated return mail stream. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in a distribution environment where operational efficiency must be balanced with regulatory compliance and customer service. The pressure to meet delivery targets can lead to shortcuts that compromise service quality and potentially violate established procedures. The core challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate course of action when faced with a conflict between immediate operational demands and the need for thorough, compliant processes. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established procedures for handling undeliverable items. This aligns with Royal Mail's operational guidelines and regulatory obligations concerning the secure and proper handling of mail. By following the defined process, the postal operative ensures that the item is accounted for, its status is accurately updated, and it is returned to the appropriate handling stream for further action or return to sender. This upholds the integrity of the postal service, protects customer data and property, and avoids potential breaches of data protection regulations or service-level agreements. It demonstrates a commitment to professionalism and accountability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves discarding the item. This is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. It directly violates Royal Mail's procedures for handling undeliverable mail, which mandates specific steps for its return or disposal under controlled conditions. Ethically, it constitutes a breach of trust and a failure to deliver the service for which postage was paid. It could also lead to the loss of valuable or sensitive items, with potential legal and financial repercussions. Another incorrect approach is to leave the item in a public or unsecured area. This poses a significant security risk, potentially exposing the contents to theft, damage, or unauthorized access. It breaches Royal Mail's duty of care to protect mail in transit and could violate data protection principles if the item contains personal information. This action demonstrates a disregard for operational protocols and a failure to uphold the security standards expected of a postal service. A third incorrect approach is to attempt to deliver the item to a neighboring address without explicit authorization or established procedure. While seemingly an attempt to resolve the delivery issue, this bypasses the formal process for handling undeliverable items. It can lead to misdelivery, disputes between neighbors, and a loss of accountability for the item. It also risks violating privacy if the contents are inadvertently revealed to an unauthorized recipient. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must develop a systematic approach to problem solving that prioritizes compliance and established procedures. When faced with an operational challenge, the first step is to recall and apply relevant company policies and regulatory requirements. If unsure, seeking guidance from a supervisor or consulting operational manuals is crucial. The decision-making process should involve assessing the potential consequences of each action, considering both immediate operational impact and long-term implications for service quality, security, and regulatory adherence. This structured approach ensures that decisions are not based on expediency, but on sound professional judgment, and a commitment to best practice. Question 4. Implementation of a new automated parcel sorting system at International Distribution Services, Royal Mail, is planned. This system will process significant volumes of customer data, including names, addresses, and delivery preferences. Before the system goes live, what is the most appropriate action to ensure compliance with data protection regulations and ethical handling of customer information? Option A. Rely on the IT department's assurance that the new system is secure without a formal review of its data handling processes. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential risks to customer data privacy and security before deployment. Option C. Proceed with the system's implementation immediately to gain operational efficiencies, assuming existing data protection policies are sufficient. Option D. Implement the system and address any data privacy concerns that arise after it has been fully operational for a period. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify and mitigate potential risks to customer data privacy and security before deployment. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between operational efficiency and regulatory compliance when introducing new technology. The need to assess the impact of a new automated sorting system on existing data handling procedures, particularly concerning customer data privacy and security, requires careful judgment. A rushed implementation without a thorough impact assessment risks contravening data protection regulations, leading to potential fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates how the new system will affect data collection, processing, storage, and security. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, as mandated by relevant data protection legislation. It ensures that privacy considerations are integrated from the outset, minimizing risks and demonstrating due diligence. This proactive approach is best professional practice as it safeguards customer data, ensures compliance with legal obligations, and builds confidence in the organization's commitment to data privacy. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness by proceeding with the implementation without a formal impact assessment would represent a significant regulatory failure. This bypasses the legal requirement to assess data protection risks before processing personal data, potentially leading to breaches of data protection laws. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the technical functionality of the new system without considering its implications for data privacy, would also be a failure. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the broader regulatory landscape and the ethical responsibilities associated with handling customer information. A third incorrect approach, assuming existing data protection measures are sufficient without verifying their applicability to the new system, is also professionally unacceptable. This assumption can lead to unforeseen vulnerabilities and noncompliance, as new technologies often introduce novel data processing activities that require specific safeguards. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying potential regulatory touchpoints. This involves understanding the specific data protection laws applicable to the organization's operations. Subsequently, a risk-based approach should be employed, where potential impacts on data privacy and security are systematically identified, analyzed, and mitigated. This process should be iterative, involving relevant stakeholders, including legal and compliance teams, IT, and operational staff. The goal is to achieve a balance between technological advancement and robust data protection, ensuring that all implementations are compliant and ethically sound. Question 5. The assessment process reveals that a depot manager, under pressure to meet delivery targets, is considering a shortcut for handling a customer complaint regarding a damaged parcel. The customer has provided their name and address, but the exact delivery date is slightly misremembered. The manager believes they can resolve the issue faster by simply telling the customer, "We'll look into it," without formally logging the complaint or verifying the details, and by sharing the customer's name and address with a delivery driver to see if they recall the incident. Which of the following approaches best aligns with International Distribution Services, Royal Mail, regulatory obligations, and professional best practices? Option A. Dismiss the complaint due to the minor inaccuracy in the delivery date provided by the customer. Option B. Formally log the complaint, verify the customer's details against delivery records, and follow the established procedure for investigating damaged parcels, ensuring all personal data is handled securely and in accordance with data protection laws. Option C. Verbally assure the customer that the issue will be investigated but do not record the complaint, as time is of the essence for deliveries. Option D. Share the customer's name and address with other delivery personnel to see if anyone recalls the incident, and then provide a vague assurance to the customer. The correct answer is B. Formally log the complaint, verify the customer's details against delivery records, and follow the established procedure for investigating damaged parcels, ensuring all personal data is handled securely and in accordance with data protection laws. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in large organizations where different departments may have conflicting priorities or interpretations of policy. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate operational needs of a delivery depot with the broader strategic objectives and regulatory compliance requirements of international distribution services, Royal Mail. A depot manager's focus on efficiency and meeting delivery targets can sometimes clash with the need for thorough record-keeping and adherence to data protection principles, especially when dealing with customer information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that operational pressures do not lead to breaches of policy or law. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates an understanding of the paramount importance of data protection regulations, specifically the UK Data Protection Act 2018, which incorporates GDPR principles. Royal Mail, as a data controller, has a legal and ethical obligation to protect customer personal data. Implementing a clear, documented process for handling customer complaints that includes secure storage and timely escalation, even if it slightly impacts immediate delivery efficiency, represents best professional practice. This approach prioritizes compliance, customer trust, and the mitigation of legal and reputational risks. It aligns with the principles of data minimization, accuracy, and integrity, ensuring that customer data is handled responsibly throughout its life cycle. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves dismissing a customer complaint due to perceived minor inaccuracies in the customer's provided details. This fails to recognize that all customer interactions, especially complaints, are opportunities to gather feedback and address potential service failures. Ethically, it shows a lack of customer care. Legally, it could be seen as a failure to adequately address a customer's concerns, potentially leading to further escalation and reputational damage. It also risks overlooking a genuine service issue that, if unaddressed, could impact other customers or operational processes. Another incorrect approach is to verbally acknowledge the complaint but fail to record it or follow up, citing time constraints. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. The UK Data Protection Act 2018 mandates that personal data, including details of complaints, must be processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently. A lack of documentation means there is no audit trail, no evidence of compliance, and no ability to track recurring issues. This can lead to repeated service failures and a loss of customer confidence. It also violates the principle of accountability, as there is no record of how the complaint was handled. A third incorrect approach is to share the customer's personal details with other delivery personnel to resolve the issue quickly, without proper authorization or a legitimate need to know. This is a direct breach of data protection principles. The UK Data Protection Act 2018 strictly controls the sharing of personal data. Unauthorized disclosure can lead to severe penalties, including fines, and erodes customer trust. It demonstrates a disregard for privacy and security protocols, prioritizing speed over legal and ethical obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a framework that prioritizes compliance and customer service. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing relevant regulations, e.g., UK Data Protection Act 2018. 2. Establishing clear, documented procedures for handling sensitive information and customer interactions. 3. Training staff on these procedures and the importance of compliance. 4. Empowering staff to escalate issues when necessary, rather than making ad hoc decisions that could lead to breaches. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating procedures to reflect changes in regulations or operational needs. In any situation involving customer data or complaints, the default should be to follow established, compliant procedures, even if it requires a slight adjustment to immediate operational targets. Question 6. Market research demonstrates that customers increasingly expect prompt and efficient resolution of delivery issues, which often requires access to historical delivery data. However, international distribution services, Royal Mail, must also ensure strict adherence to data protection regulations. Considering these competing demands, which of the following approaches best balances customer service needs with regulatory compliance for managing customer delivery data? Option A. Adopt a flexible approach where data is deleted based on the perceived likelihood of future customer inquiries, without a formal policy or defined retention periods. Option B. Delete all customer delivery data immediately after a delivery is confirmed as successfully completed, to minimize storage costs and reduce the risk of data breaches. Option C. Implement a robust data retention policy that defines specific periods for retaining different types of customer delivery data based on legal requirements and operational necessity, followed by secure and verifiable deletion of data once these periods expire. Option D. Retain all customer delivery data indefinitely to ensure that historical information is always available for any potential customer inquiry or operational review, regardless of its relevance. The correct answer is C. Implement a robust data retention policy that defines specific periods for retaining different types of customer delivery data based on legal requirements and operational necessity, followed by secure and verifiable deletion of data once these periods expire. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient service delivery with the imperative to adhere to regulatory requirements concerning data handling and customer privacy. The core tension lies in determining the appropriate level of data retention and disposal, which directly impacts compliance with data protection laws and the potential for security breaches. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overtension, which increases risk and cost, and undertension, which could lead to non-compliance or an inability to respond to legitimate inquiries. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for data management that aligns with the principles of data minimization and security mandated by relevant regulations. Specifically, it involves establishing clear retention schedules based on legal obligations and business needs, followed by secure and verifiable deletion of data once its purpose has been fulfilled. This proactive and compliant stance minimizes the risk of regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and unauthorized access to sensitive information. An incorrect approach that involves retaining all customer data indefinitely without a defined purpose or review process fails to adhere to the principle of data minimization, a cornerstone of data protection legislation. This indefinite retention increases the attack surface for cyber threats and can lead to significant fines for non-compliance. Another incorrect approach, which involves deleting data immediately after delivery without considering any potential follow-up requirements or legal obligations, risks non-compliance with regulations that may mandate certain retention periods for transactional data or customer service records. Furthermore, a haphazard approach to data deletion, where records are removed based on convenience rather than a defined policy, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for data governance, potentially leading to inconsistencies and an inability to produce records when legally required. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of applicable data protection laws and regulations, such as the UK GDPR. This includes identifying the types of data collected, the purposes for which it is processed, and the legal basis for its retention. A risk assessment should be conducted to evaluate the potential consequences of both overtension and undertension. Subsequently, a clear data retention policy should be developed, documented, and communicated to all relevant personnel. This policy should outline specific retention periods for different categories of data, along with procedures for secure deletion or anonymization. Regular reviews and audits of the data management process are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and to adapt to any changes in regulatory requirements or business needs. Question 7. System analysis indicates a pattern of unusual data access requests originating from a specific department, potentially involving customer personal information beyond their immediate operational needs. You observe a colleague in this department accessing a large volume of customer records without a clear, documented business justification during a late-night shift. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Discuss your observations with other colleagues in your team to gauge their opinions on the colleague's behavior. Option B. Immediately report the observed anomaly and potential data access issue to the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and the relevant compliance team. Option C. Ignore the observation, assuming it is a temporary system error or an authorized, albeit unusual, data retrieval for a specific project. Option D. Directly approach the colleague to question their actions and request an explanation for accessing the customer records. The correct answer is B. Immediately report the observed anomaly and potential data access issue to the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and the relevant compliance team. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge involving the potential misuse of confidential customer data within a distribution network. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for operational efficiency and service improvement with the stringent data protection regulations governing customer information. A breach of these regulations can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The pressure to meet performance targets can create a temptation to cut corners, making ethical vigilance and adherence to policy paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data privacy and regulatory compliance by immediately escalating the observed anomaly to the Data Protection Officer, DPO, and the relevant compliance team. The individual demonstrates an understanding of their responsibility under the UK GDPR and the company's internal data handling policies. This action ensures that the potential breach is investigated by the appropriate authorities within the organization, who are equipped to assess the severity, identify the root cause, and implement corrective measures in line with legal obligations. This aligns with the principles of accountability and data protection by design and by default, as mandated by the UK GDPR. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves ignoring the anomaly, assuming it is a minor technical glitch. This fails to acknowledge the potential for serious data privacy violations and breaches the duty of care to protect customer information, which is a fundamental ethical and legal requirement. It also contravenes the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation if data is being accessed or processed without a legitimate business need. Another incorrect approach is to directly confront the colleague involved without involving the proper channels. While intended to resolve the issue quickly, this bypasses established internal procedures for handling data breaches or suspected policy violations. It could lead to an incomplete investigation, potential mishandling of evidence, and failure to adhere to the formal reporting mechanisms required by data protection laws and company policy. This approach risks exacerbating the situation and may not result in the necessary corrective actions being taken. A further incorrect approach is to discuss the anomaly with other colleagues not directly involved in data protection or compliance. This constitutes an unauthorized disclosure of potentially sensitive information, creating further privacy risks and potentially violating confidentiality agreements. It undermines the integrity of the investigation process and can lead to the spread of misinformation or speculation, further damaging trust within the organization and potentially impacting the individuals whose data may have been compromised. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should follow a structured decision-making process. First, identify the potential risk and its implications, considering both operational and regulatory aspects. Second, consult internal policies and procedures related to data handling and incident reporting. Third, escalate the issue through the designated channels, such as the DPO or compliance department, providing clear and factual information. Fourth, cooperate fully with any subsequent investigation and follow guidance from the relevant authorities. This systematic approach ensures that all actions are compliant, ethical, and contribute to the protection of customer data and the organization's integrity. Question 8. Investigation of a situation where a backlog of parcels is developing due to unforeseen operational disruptions, leading to a risk of missing delivery targets, and a manager is considering implementing a temporary non-standard sorting process to expedite handling. Option A. Prioritize clearing the backlog using the new sorting method without informing customers of the change or potential risks, focusing solely on speed. Option B. Implement a new, unapproved sorting method immediately to clear the backlog, assuming the risk of future issues is acceptable in exchange for meeting current delivery targets. Option C. Advise customers that all deliveries will be on time, despite the known backlog, and hope that the operational issues resolve themselves before the delivery commitments are breached. Option D. Document the operational disruption, assess its impact on delivery timelines, and communicate transparently with affected customers about potential delays, while exploring all approved methods to mitigate the backlog within regulatory guidelines. The correct answer is D. Document the operational disruption, assess its impact on delivery timelines, and communicate transparently with affected customers about potential delays, while exploring all approved methods to mitigate the backlog within regulatory guidelines. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and customer service expectations. The pressure to meet delivery targets can lead to shortcuts that compromise service quality and potentially violate established procedures. The core difficulty lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with expedited processes without alienating customers or breaching service-level agreements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established procedures and regulatory guidelines, even under pressure. This reflects best professional practice by ensuring that service quality and customer trust are maintained. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of responsible service delivery, which are implicitly or explicitly part of the regulatory framework governing postal services. By documenting the issue and seeking appropriate resolution, it upholds transparency and accountability, crucial elements in maintaining public confidence and regulatory standing. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves bypassing established procedures to meet targets. This poses a significant regulatory risk as it can lead to breaches of service-level agreements, customer complaints, and potential fines or sanctions from regulatory bodies. Ethically, it undermines the commitment to reliable service. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the issue and hope it resolves itself. This demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and can exacerbate the situation, leading to greater customer dissatisfaction and potential reputational damage. It fails to address the root cause and neglects the duty of care to customers. A third incorrect approach is to communicate a misleading or inaccurate status to the customer. This is a direct ethical failure, eroding trust and potentially leading to further complications if the customer relies on the false information. It also contravenes regulations that mandate accurate communication regarding service delivery. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should employ a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly identify the operational challenge and its potential impact on service delivery and customer satisfaction. Second, they should consult relevant internal policies and external regulatory guidelines to understand the prescribed procedures and acceptable deviations, if any. Third, they should assess the risks associated with different courses of action, considering both operational and compliance implications. Fourth, they should choose the option that best balances efficiency with adherence to standards, prioritizing transparency and customer well-being. If immediate resolution is not possible, clear and honest communication with the customer and escalation to appropriate internal channels are paramount. Question 9. What factors determine the most appropriate method for implementing a new sorting technology within Royal Mail's international distribution network, considering both operational efficiency and regulatory compliance? Option A. The perceived ease of use for existing staff and the initial capital expenditure required for acquisition and installation. Option B. A comprehensive assessment of the technology's impact on service delivery times, data security protocols, and adherence to international postal regulations, alongside a pilot program to validate performance and identify potential issues before full rollout. Option C. A decision based on the recommendations of the technology vendor and the anecdotal feedback from a limited number of operational sites. Option D. The speed at which the technology can be integrated to achieve immediate cost savings with minimal disruption to current operational workflows. The correct answer is B. A comprehensive assessment of the technology's impact on service delivery times, data security protocols, and adherence to international postal regulations, alongside a pilot program to validate performance and identify potential issues before full rollout. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and ethical considerations in a dynamic environment. The decision-maker must navigate potential conflicts between immediate cost-saving measures and long-term service quality, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing international distribution services, Royal Mail operations. The pressure to meet performance targets can sometimes lead to shortcuts that might inadvertently breach established guidelines or compromise customer trust. The correct approach prioritizes a systematic evaluation of all relevant factors, including regulatory requirements, operational impact, and potential risks, before making a decision. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that any proposed change is not only economically viable, but also legally sound and ethically defensible. It demonstrates a commitment to maintaining the integrity of the service and upholding the standards expected by both the regulator and the public. This methodical process, often referred to as a risk-based approach, is implicitly or explicitly encouraged by regulatory bodies to ensure that changes are implemented responsibly. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on immediate cost reduction without considering the broader implications fails to meet regulatory obligations. For instance, overlooking potential impacts on service delivery times or the security of mail could lead to breaches of service-level agreements or postal regulations. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of implementation over thorough impact assessment risks unforeseen consequences, such as increased error rates or customer complaints, which can damage reputation and lead to regulatory scrutiny. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal judgment without consulting relevant data or guidelines is inherently flawed, as it lacks objectivity and can lead to decisions that are not in the best interest of the organization or its stakeholders, potentially violating principles of good governance and due diligence. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that involves identifying the problem or opportunity, gathering relevant information, including regulatory requirements and operational data, identifying and evaluating potential solutions, assessing the risks and benefits of each solution, selecting the best course of action, implementing the decision, and reviewing the outcome. This iterative process ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory mandates. Question 10. When evaluating the appropriate handling of customer personal data within Royal Mail's operational framework, which of the following actions best aligns with the principles of UK data protection law and internal company policy? Option A. Accessing customer delivery information solely for the purpose of fulfilling a delivery request or resolving a customer's specific inquiry related to their parcel. Option B. Reviewing customer delivery histories out of personal interest to see what items neighbors have had delivered. Option C. Sharing customer contact details with a friend who is looking for a local service provider. Option D. Using customer address data to identify potential leads for a personal side business. The correct answer is A. Accessing customer delivery information solely for the purpose of fulfilling a delivery request or resolving a customer's specific inquiry related to their parcel. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge involving the handling of sensitive customer data within the context of Royal Mail's operations, which are governed by UK data protection laws, primarily the UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018. The challenge lies in balancing the operational need for data access with the stringent legal and ethical obligations to protect customer privacy. A failure to adhere to these regulations can result in significant reputational damage, financial penalties, and loss of customer trust. The employee must exercise careful judgment to ensure compliance while fulfilling their role effectively. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to Royal Mail's internal data handling policies, which are designed to align with UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018. This means only accessing customer data when it is directly necessary for the performance of their duties, such as processing a delivery or resolving a customer query. All access should be logged and auditable. This represents best professional practice because it directly upholds the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation enshrined in UK data protection law. It ensures that personal data is processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently, and only for specified, explicit, and legitimate purposes. This approach demonstrates a commitment to customer privacy and regulatory compliance, which is paramount for a trusted service provider like Royal Mail. Incorrect approaches analysis. Accessing customer data out of curiosity or to assist friends and family without a legitimate business reason constitutes a breach of the UK GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018. This violates the principles of lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, as well as purpose limitation. It is an unauthorized disclosure of personal data, which can lead to severe penalties. Sharing customer data with colleagues who do not have a legitimate need to know for their job role is also a violation. This goes against the principle of data minimization and can lead to unauthorized access and potential misuse of sensitive information. It also breaches the duty of confidentiality owed to customers. Using customer data for personal gain, such as identifying potential targets for unsolicited marketing or other commercial activities outside of Royal Mail's approved services, is a serious breach of UK data protection law and ethical conduct. This is a clear violation of purpose limitation and can lead to significant legal repercussions and reputational damage. Professional reasoning. Professionals in roles handling customer data must adopt a privacy by design mindset. This involves proactively considering data protection implications in all their actions. The decision-making process should always start with a clear understanding of the legal basis for accessing any personal data. If there is no legitimate, documented business reason directly related to their role in Royal Mail services, then access should not occur. Furthermore, professionals should be aware of and adhere to their organization's specific data protection policies and reporting procedures for any data-related concerns or incidents. Regular training on data protection regulations and internal policies is crucial for maintaining a high standard of compliance. Question 11. The control framework reveals a discrepancy in the scanning process for a batch of parcels due to a temporary system glitch. While the standard procedure requires each parcel to be scanned at multiple points to ensure accurate tracking, the glitch has prevented this for a small number of items. The operational manager is pushing for the batch to be dispatched immediately to meet a critical delivery deadline, suggesting that the scanning issue can be rectified post-dispatch. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Document the system glitch and the affected parcels, inform the relevant supervisor of the deviation, and seek authorization for post-dispatch reconciliation of scanning data before the next operational cycle. Option B. Hold the entire batch of parcels until the system glitch is fully resolved and all parcels are scanned according to the standard procedure, even if it means missing the delivery deadline. Option C. Proceed with dispatching the parcels immediately to meet the deadline, assuming the scanning issue will be resolved later without formal notification or documentation. Option D. Manually rescan all affected parcels before dispatch, even if it significantly delays the process and causes the delivery deadline to be missed. The correct answer is A. Document the system glitch and the affected parcels, inform the relevant supervisor of the deviation, and seek authorization for post-dispatch reconciliation of scanning data before the next operational cycle. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between operational efficiency and the integrity of the internal control framework. The need to meet delivery targets, key performance indicator for Royal Mail, can create pressure to bypass or expedite control procedures. This pressure requires careful judgment to ensure that the pursuit of speed does not compromise the accuracy and reliability of the distribution process, which underpins customer trust and regulatory compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to established control procedures. Even when faced with operational pressures, this aligns with the principles of good governance and risk management, ensuring that potential errors or fraud are identified and mitigated. By documenting the deviation and seeking appropriate authorization, the individual demonstrates accountability and upholds the integrity of the control framework. This proactive communication and adherence to policy are crucial for maintaining a robust operational environment and satisfying regulatory expectations regarding internal controls. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the control procedure entirely would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses a mechanism designed to prevent errors or fraud, potentially leading to misdelivered items, lost packages, or even more serious security breaches. This failure to follow established procedures could be viewed as negligence and a breach of professional duty, potentially exposing Royal Mail to financial penalties or reputational damage. Another incorrect approach which is to proceed with the deviation without proper documentation or authorization, also constitutes a regulatory and ethical failure. While it might appear to address the immediate operational pressure, it creates a lack of transparency and accountability. This makes it difficult to track deviations, identify systemic control weaknesses, or investigate any subsequent issues. It undermines the audit trail and can lead to a culture where control procedures are seen as optional, eroding the overall effectiveness of the control environment. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the control framework and its purpose. When faced with a conflict between operational demands and control requirements, the professional should first assess the potential impact of the deviation on accuracy, security, and compliance. If the deviation is deemed necessary, the next step is to follow the established escalation and authorization procedures. This typically involves documenting the proposed deviation, the reasons for it, and the proposed mitigation strategies, and then seeking approval from the appropriate level of management. This structured approach ensures that decisions are made with full awareness of the risks and that appropriate oversight is maintained. Question 12. Benchmark analysis indicates a consistent increase in customer complaints regarding late parcel deliveries across several key urban areas. While operational pressures are acknowledged, a superficial review suggests that simply increasing the number of delivery vehicles might not be the most effective long-term solution. Considering the regulatory framework governing postal services and customer expectations for reliable delivery, what is the most appropriate strategic approach to address this trend? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of current delivery routes, sorting processes, and dispatch schedules, correlating this data with customer feedback and operational performance metrics to identify specific systemic inefficiencies. Option B. Immediately authorize overtime for all delivery staff and implement a temporary policy to prioritize all parcels marked as express for delivery, regardless of the original service level purchased. Option C. Focus solely on increasing the fleet size and hiring additional drivers in the affected areas to meet the perceived demand, without altering existing operational procedures. Option D. Implement a public relations campaign to manage customer expectations and highlight the challenges faced by the Postal Service, while deferring any significant operational changes until after the peak season. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of current delivery routes, sorting processes, and dispatch schedules, correlating this data with customer feedback and operational performance metrics to identify specific systemic inefficiencies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and customer service expectations. The pressure to meet delivery targets, common metric in logistics, can lead to shortcuts that compromise service quality or violate established procedures. The need to maintain a positive public image for Royal Mail, a trusted national institution, adds another layer of complexity, as any perceived failure can have significant reputational consequences. The core challenge lies in identifying and implementing solutions that are both effective in the short term and sustainable in the long term, without jeopardizing regulatory adherence or customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach, which involves a thorough review of existing processes, data analysis to identify root causes, and consultation with operational staff and customer feedback mechanisms, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and evidence-based decision-making, which are implicitly encouraged by regulatory frameworks governing service delivery and customer protection. By systematically investigating the issue, Royal Mail can identify specific bottlenecks or inefficiencies that are contributing to late deliveries. This data-driven approach ensures that interventions are targeted and effective, rather than relying on anecdotal evidence or quick fixes. Furthermore, involving operational staff fosters buy-in and leverages their on-the-ground knowledge, while considering customer feedback ensures that solutions address actual user experience. This holistic approach is crucial for maintaining service standards and adhering to any service-level agreements or regulatory obligations related to delivery times and customer satisfaction. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to solely focus on increasing the number of delivery drivers without understanding the underlying reasons for delays. This could lead to increased operational costs without addressing the root cause, potentially violating principles of efficient resource allocation and responsible business practice. Might also mask deeper systemic issues, such as inefficient route planning or sorting processes, which could still lead to delays and customer dissatisfaction, thereby failing to meet implied service standards. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a blanket policy of prioritizing urgent deliveries at the expense of standard ones, without a clear, documented, and communicated framework for such prioritization. This could lead to inconsistencies in service delivery, customer complaints, and potential breaches of service-level agreements or customer charter commitments, which are often subject to regulatory oversight. It also fails to address the systemic issues causing delays for all delivery types. A third incorrect approach would be to dismiss customer complaints about late deliveries as isolated incidents without further investigation. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to customer service and could lead to a decline in customer trust and loyalty. From a regulatory perspective, a pattern of unaddressed service failures could attract scrutiny from consumer protection bodies or postal regulators, potentially leading to sanctions or reputational damage. It fails to acknowledge the importance of customer feedback as a vital input for service improvement. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This involves clearly defining the problem, gathering relevant data from multiple sources, operational metrics, customer feedback, staff input, analyzing this data to identify root causes, developing a range of potential solutions, evaluating these solutions against criteria such as effectiveness, cost, feasibility, and regulatory compliance, and finally, implementing and monitoring the chosen solution. This iterative process ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with both business objectives and regulatory expectations. The focus should always be on sustainable improvements that enhance service quality and maintain customer trust, rather than short-term fixes that may create further problems. Question 13. The efficiency study reveals that a significant portion of operational costs can be reduced by streamlining the customer complaint resolution process, potentially by limiting the scope of investigations and reducing the time allocated for each case. As a manager, you are tasked with recommending a course of action. Option A. Initiate a pilot program to test the proposed streamlining measures on a small scale, gathering data on customer satisfaction and resolution effectiveness before a full rollout. Option B. Reject the proposed streamlining measures outright, citing potential negative impacts on customer service without further investigation. Option C. Propose an alternative solution that focuses on improving staff training and technology to enhance efficiency without compromising the thoroughness of complaint resolution. Option D. Implement the proposed streamlining measures immediately to achieve the identified cost savings, as efficiency is a key performance indicator. Correct answer is D. Implement the proposed streamlining measures immediately to achieve the identified cost savings, as efficiency is a key performance indicator. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for cost reduction with the long-term implications for service quality and regulatory compliance. The pressure to meet efficiency targets can lead to decisions that, while seemingly beneficial in the short term, may violate the principles of fair treatment of customers and the spirit of regulatory oversight. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of essential service standards or customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive review of the efficiency study's findings, considering all potential impacts before implementing changes. This aligns with the regulatory framework's emphasis on responsible service provision and customer welfare. By seeking diverse input and considering alternative solutions, it demonstrates a commitment to ethical decision-making and proactive risk management, ensuring that any changes are sustainable and compliant. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost savings without considering the impact on service levels would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to a breach of regulatory obligations related to service quality and customer satisfaction. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established consultation processes or ignoring feedback from operational staff would be ethically flawed, as it undermines transparency and collaborative problem-solving, potentially leading to unforeseen negative consequences and regulatory scrutiny. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that involves clearly defining the problem and objectives, gathering and analyzing all relevant data, including potential impacts, identifying and evaluating a range of potential solutions, consulting with relevant stakeholders, assessing risks and benefits, and finally, making a well-reasoned decision with clear justification and a plan for monitoring outcomes. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and aligned with both business objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 14. Process analysis reveals that International Distribution Services, Royal Mail, is considering the implementation of a new, highly advanced automated sorting system designed to significantly increase mail processing speed. This system will process a vast quantity of mail, including items that may contain personal data. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure compliance with data protection regulations during this implementation? Option A. Deploy the new system with minimal initial data protection safeguards, relying on the existing general data protection policies to cover any unforeseen data handling issues that may arise during the transition. Option B. Focus exclusively on the technical performance and speed of the new sorting system, assuming that any data privacy concerns can be addressed by the IT department through ad hoc adjustments as needed. Option C. Prioritize a phased rollout of the new sorting system, incorporating robust data anonymization and pseudonymization techniques for any personal data process during the initial testing and integration phases, with ongoing data protection impact assessments. Option D. Implement the new system immediately to gain efficiency benefits, with a plan to conduct a comprehensive data privacy audit only after the system has been fully operational for 6 months to identify and address any potential breaches. Correct answer is D. Implement the new system immediately to gain efficiency benefits, with a plan to conduct a comprehensive data privacy audit only after the system has been fully operational for 6 months to identify and address any potential breaches. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between operational efficiency and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning the handling of sensitive customer data within the context of international distribution. Royal Mail, as a postal service, is entrusted with handling a vast volume of mail, some of which may contain personal information. The challenge lies in implementing new automated sorting technology without compromising the privacy and security of this data. Adhering strictly to the UK's Data Protection Act 2018, DPA 2018, and the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, principles, which are directly applicable to Royal Mail's operations. The correct approach, which involves a phased rollout with robust data anonymization and pseudonymization techniques, represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data protection by design and by default, as mandated by Article 25 of the GDPR. This proactive measure minimizes the risk of data breaches and unauthorized access during the critical implementation phase. It also aligns with the DPA 2018 emphasis on data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that personal data is only processed for the specific, explicit, and legitimate purposes for which it was collected. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on speed of implementation without adequate data protection measures would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This would violate Article 5 of the GDPR, which requires personal data to be processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently, and to be adequate, relevant, and not excessive. It would also contravene the DPA 2018 principles of data security and integrity, potentially leading to substantial fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that relies on post-implementation data audits to identify and rectify issues is also professionally unacceptable. This reactive stance fails to uphold the principle of accountability under Article 5.2 of the GDPR, which requires the data controller to be responsible for and be able to demonstrate compliance with the data protection principles. Such an approach increases the likelihood of data breaches occurring before they are detected, making remediation more complex and potentially exposing individuals to harm. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, identifying potential data protection vulnerabilities at each stage of technological implementation. This should be followed by the development of a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, as required by Article 35 of the GDPR, especially when new technologies are being deployed. Implementing data protection measures from the outset, rather than as an afterthought, and ensuring continuous monitoring and review are crucial for maintaining compliance and public trust. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates that a new premium parcel delivery service, offering faster guaranteed delivery times, is being considered for launch. This service will utilize a subset of existing delivery routes and resources. What is the most professionally responsible approach to ensure this new service aligns with Royal Mail's commitment to reliable service delivery and regulatory obligations? Option A. Proceed with the new service, assuming that the premium nature will naturally lead to fewer customer issues and minimal impact on existing operations. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, including potential impacts on existing services and customer satisfaction, and consult with relevant stakeholders and regulatory bodies before full implementation. Option C. Implement the new service using existing resources and monitor its performance, focusing primarily on the projected revenue increase. Option D. Launch the new service immediately to capture market opportunity and address any service disruptions or customer complaints as they arise. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, including potential impacts on existing services and customer satisfaction, and consult with relevant stakeholders and regulatory bodies before full implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing operational efficiency with regulatory compliance and ethical considerations. The core difficulty lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with a new service offering that could inadvertently impact existing service levels and customer trust, particularly within the context of a regulated postal service. Careful judgment is required to ensure that innovation does not compromise fundamental service obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and stakeholder consultation before full implementation. This aligns with the principles of responsible service delivery and regulatory oversight expected of a public service provider like Royal Mail. It demonstrates a commitment to understanding potential negative impacts on service quality, customer experience, and compliance with any relevant postal service regulations or codes of practice. Proactive engagement with regulatory bodies and customer groups ensures transparency and allows for adjustments to mitigate risks, thereby upholding public trust and operational integrity. This approach reflects best professional practice by embedding a culture of due diligence and continuous improvement. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the new service without a comprehensive risk assessment. This is a direct failure to adhere to due diligence requirements and could lead to unforeseen service disruptions, customer complaints, and potential breaches of regulatory standards. It prioritizes speed to market over responsible implementation, which is ethically questionable and professionally unsound in a regulated environment. Another incorrect approach is to implement the service and only address issues if they arise. This reactive stance is inefficient and potentially damaging. It suggests a lack of foresight and a disregard for the potential negative consequences, which can erode customer confidence and lead to significant remediation costs and reputational damage. It fails to meet the ethical obligation to provide a reliable service. A third incorrect approach is to focus solely on the potential revenue benefits without adequately considering the operational and customer impact. This narrow focus overlooks the broader responsibilities of a postal service, including its commitment to universal service obligations and customer satisfaction. It represents a failure to consider the holistic impact of business decisions, which is a critical aspect of professional conduct in this sector. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the strategic objectives. This should be followed by a comprehensive assessment of potential risks and benefits, considering all relevant stakeholders, including customers, employees, and regulatory bodies. A thorough review of applicable regulations and ethical guidelines is paramount. The decision-making process should then involve evaluating different implementation strategies, prioritizing those that demonstrate robust risk mitigation and alignment with service commitments. Finally, a plan for ongoing monitoring and evaluation should be established to ensure sustained compliance and service quality. Question 16. The assessment process reveals that during your delivery route, you discover a small, unmarked package that feels heavier than expected and appears to contain something valuable. Your immediate priority is to complete your route on time. What is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Discreetly place the package in your personal bag to investigate its contents later, as completing your route is the primary objective. Option B. Dispose of the package in a nearby bin, assuming it is unwanted or discarded mail. Option C. Secure the package and immediately report it to your supervisor or designated point of contact according to Royal Mail's lost property procedures. Option D. Attempt to open the package yourself to identify the sender or recipient to expedite its return, bypassing official channels. The correct answer is C. Secure the package and immediately report it to your supervisor or designated point of contact according to Royal Mail's lost property procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in operational roles where immediate pressures can conflict with established procedures and ethical considerations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficiency and meeting delivery targets with the imperative to act with integrity and adhere to company policy, particularly concerning the handling of potentially valuable items. A professional in this role must exercise sound judgment, recognizing that shortcuts, even if seemingly minor, can have significant consequences for the company's reputation and legal standing. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established procedures for handling found items. This aligns with Royal Mail's regulatory obligations and ethical guidelines, which mandate responsible handling of mail and its contents. By following the correct procedure, the individual demonstrates integrity, trustworthiness, and a commitment to the company's values. This approach safeguards against potential accusations of theft or mishandling, protects the company from liability, and ensures that lost items have the highest chance of being reunited with their rightful owners. This is best professional practice as it upholds the principles of accountability and due diligence expected of all Royal Mail employees. An incorrect approach that involves keeping the item for personal gain represents a clear breach of trust in company policy and potentially criminal theft. This is ethically unacceptable and would likely lead to disciplinary action, including dismissal and possible legal prosecution. Another incorrect approach, such as discarding the item without proper reporting, demonstrates negligence and a disregard for the potential value or importance of the item to the sender or recipient. This failure to follow procedure could result in the permanent loss of the item and damage to Royal Mail's reputation for reliability. A third incorrect approach, such as attempting to find the owner directly without following official channels, bypasses established security and verification processes, potentially exposing both the employee and the company to risks, and may not be effective in ensuring the item reaches the correct person. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that involves 1. Identifying the core issue. An item of potential value has been found. 2. Recalling relevant policies and procedures. What is the company's protocol for found items? 3. Assessing risks. What are the potential consequences of different actions, e.g., theft, loss, reputational damage? 4. Choosing the action that best aligns with company policy, ethical standards, and legal requirements, even if it requires a slight deviation from immediate efficiency goals. In this case, the established procedure for reporting and handling found items is the only professionally sound course of action. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a significant reputational impact if a new supplier, with whom a senior manager has a known past business association, is awarded a substantial contract without a thorough, independent due diligence process. The contract offers a substantial immediate revenue increase for international distribution services. You are tasked with reviewing the supplier's proposal. Option A. Proceed with the review of the supplier's proposal, focusing solely on the commercial merits and assuming the senior manager's association is not a material factor. Option B. Conduct your own informal inquiries into the supplier's background and the senior manager's past association to assess the risk before deciding whether to escalate. Option C. Immediately escalate the situation to the compliance department, outlining the potential conflict of interest and requesting guidance on the appropriate due diligence procedures. Option D. Award the contract to the supplier based on the potential revenue increase, as the risk matrix indicates only a moderate likelihood of impact and the association is a past one. The correct answer is C. Immediately escalate the situation to the compliance department, outlining the potential conflict of interest and requesting guidance on the appropriate due diligence procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefit of a potentially lucrative contract with the long-term reputational and ethical implications for international distribution services, Royal Mail. The core of the dilemma lies in the potential for undisclosed conflicts of interest and the obligation to act with integrity, even when faced with pressure to secure business. The correct approach, which involves escalating the situation to the compliance department and seeking guidance, represents best professional practice because it adheres to the fundamental ethical principles of transparency and integrity expected of employees within regulated industries. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of the UK Bribery Act 2010, which mandates robust anti-bribery and corruption policies, and the general ethical guidelines promoted by CISI, Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, for financial professionals, emphasizing honesty and acting in the best interests of the firm and its stakeholders. By involving the compliance department, the employee ensures that any decision made is informed by regulatory requirements and internal policies, thereby mitigating legal and reputational risks. An incorrect approach of accepting the contract without further inquiry would be a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It would breach the duty of disclosure regarding potential conflicts of interest, potentially violating sections of the UK Bribery Act related to offering or accepting bribes, even if indirect. This could lead to severe penalties for both the individual and the company, including fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach, that of directly investigating the supplier's claims without involving compliance, risks overstepping professional boundaries and potentially compromising the integrity of any subsequent investigation. It also bypasses the established channels for handling such sensitive matters, which are designed to ensure impartiality and adherence to legal frameworks. Finally, an approach of ignoring the situation and proceeding, as if no issue exists, is a clear abdication of professional responsibility and a failure to uphold the ethical standards required by the industry and regulatory bodies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, identify the ethical or regulatory concern. Second, consult internal policies and relevant regulations. Third, seek guidance from appropriate internal departments, e.g., compliance, legal. Fourth, document all communications and decisions. And finally, act in accordance with the guidance received, prioritizing integrity and compliance above immediate personal or company gain. Question 18. Market research demonstrates a significant untapped demand for Royal Mail's parcel delivery services in a newly emerging economy with a developing regulatory framework. The initial findings suggest a high potential for rapid growth and profitability. What is the most prudent next step for Royal Mail's strategic planning team? Option A. Propose a pilot program focused on a limited service offering with minimal initial investment. Gauge market reception and operational challenges before committing further. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive feasibility study, including detailed financial modeling, risk assessment, and a thorough analysis of the target market's legal and regulatory environment to inform a go/no-go decision. Option C. Seek immediate external investment based on the promising market research, allowing investors to share the initial risk and capital expenditure. Option D. Immediately allocate substantial capital for infrastructure development and marketing campaigns to capture first-mover advantage, assuming the market research is definitive. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive feasibility study, including detailed financial modeling, risk assessment, and a thorough analysis of the target market's legal and regulatory environment to inform a go/no-go decision. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge where a new market opportunity, identified through market research, requires a significant strategic decision regarding resource allocation and potential risk. The core difficulty lies in balancing the allure of potential growth with the need for prudent financial management and adherence to regulatory compliance, particularly concerning investment and operational standards. The decision-maker must consider not only the potential return, but also the feasibility, sustainability, and ethical implications of expanding into a new territory, all within the context of Royal Mail's established operational framework and regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive feasibility study that incorporates detailed financial projections, risk assessments, and a thorough understanding of the target market's regulatory landscape. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring that strategic decisions are data-driven, risk-aware, and compliant. Specifically, reflects the principles of responsible business conduct and due diligence expected of a publicly accountable entity like Royal Mail. Adhering to regulatory frameworks governing international operations, financial reporting, and consumer protection in the new market is paramount. This methodical approach minimizes unforeseen liabilities and ensures that any expansion is sustainable and ethically sound, safeguarding the company's reputation and long-term viability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately commit significant resources based solely on the positive market research findings without further investigation. This fails to meet the regulatory requirement for due diligence and prudent financial management. It exposes the company to substantial financial risk and potential noncompliance with the laws of the new jurisdiction, which could lead to fines, operational disruptions, and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize short-term gains by cutting corners on operational standards or regulatory compliance in the new market to reduce initial investment. This is ethically unacceptable and violates the principles of fair competition and responsible business practices. It also creates a significant risk of future legal challenges and penalties, undermining the long-term success of the venture. A third incorrect approach would be to delay the decision indefinitely due to a fear of the unknown, thereby missing a potentially valuable opportunity. While caution is necessary, a complete lack of action based on preliminary positive indicators can be detrimental to business growth and competitiveness. This approach fails to demonstrate proactive strategic management and could lead to market share erosion. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objective and gathering all relevant information. This includes market data, financial projections, and regulatory requirements. The next step involves identifying and evaluating potential courses of action, considering their respective risks and benefits. A critical phase is the assessment of compliance with all applicable laws and regulations, both domestic and international. Finally, the decision should be made based on a holistic evaluation of feasibility, profitability, risk, and ethical considerations, with a clear plan for implementation and ongoing monitoring. Question 19. Governance review demonstrates that a proposed new automated system for processing customer delivery instructions could significantly reduce operational costs. However, the system's data handling protocols have not been explicitly assessed against the requirements of the Data Protection Act 2018, and the IT vendor has provided only general assurances of compliance. Which of the following represents the most appropriate next step for Royal Mail to ensure regulatory compliance? Option A. Proceed with the implementation of the new system, relying on the vendor's assurances and focusing on the cost savings, with a plan to address any potential data protection issues retrospectively if they arise. Option B. Seek informal clarification from the IT vendor regarding specific data protection features, assuming their expertise is sufficient to guarantee compliance with the Data Protection Act 2018. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, for the new system, engaging with legal and compliance teams to ensure all data processing activities align with the Data Protection Act 2018 before implementation. Option D. Implement the new system immediately to capture cost savings, and then conduct a post-implementation review of data handling practices to identify any necessary adjustments. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, for the new system, engaging with legal and compliance teams to ensure all data processing activities align with the Data Protection Act 2018 before implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between achieving operational efficiency and maintaining robust regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data handling and customer privacy. The pressure to streamline processes can inadvertently lead to shortcuts that compromise established protocols. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing demands, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of legal obligations and ethical standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, documented review of the existing data handling procedures against the specific requirements of the Data Protection Act 2018, UK GDPR. This aligns with the regulatory framework by ensuring that all data processing activities are lawful, fair, and transparent, and that appropriate technical and organizational measures are in place to protect personal data. It demonstrates a proactive commitment to compliance, which is a fundamental ethical and legal responsibility for any organization handling personal information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without a corresponding compliance assessment fails to acknowledge the significant legal and financial penalties associated with data breaches and noncompliance under the Data Protection Act 2018. This approach exhibits a regulatory failure by neglecting the explicit requirements for data protection by design and by default. Ethically, it prioritizes profit over the fundamental right to privacy of individuals whose data is being processed. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing new technology without a prior impact assessment on data protection principles represents a significant regulatory failure. This bypasses the requirement for a Data Protection Impact Assessment (DPIA), where processing is likely to result in a high risk to individuals' rights and freedoms. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the potential harm that could befall individuals due to inadequately secured or improperly processed data. A third incorrect approach that relies on informal assurances from IT vendors regarding compliance, without independent verification or contractual guarantees, is also professionally unacceptable. This constitutes a regulatory failure as it abdicates responsibility for ensuring compliance, which ultimately rests with Royal Mail. Ethically, it is negligent to proceed without due diligence, potentially exposing customer data to risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk-based approach. This begins with identifying all relevant regulatory obligations, e.g., Data Protection Act 2018. Next, assess the potential impact of any proposed changes on compliance. This should involve consulting with legal and compliance experts. Prioritize solutions that demonstrably meet both operational and regulatory requirements. Document all decisions, assessments, and justifications thoroughly. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and review mechanisms to ensure continued compliance. Question 20. Stakeholder feedback indicates a desire to streamline the customer complaint resolution process by introducing a new digital platform that automatically collects detailed customer information, including past purchase history and communication logs, to expedite issue identification. However, concerns have been raised internally regarding the scope of data collection and its alignment with current data protection regulations. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for Royal Mail to ensure regulatory compliance and ethical data handling? Option A. Conduct a Data Protection Impact Assessment (DPIA) to evaluate the risks associated with the proposed data collection and processing activities and ensure compliance with the Data Protection Act 2018 and GDPR principles before implementation. Option B. Implement the new digital platform and focus solely on the efficiency gains, assuming that the detailed data collection is implicitly consented to by the act of lodging a complaint. Option C. Proceed with the implementation of the new digital platform, relying on existing general data protection policies to govern the handling of customer information. Option D. Initiate the new digital platform with a limited scope of data collection, deferring a formal data protection review until after the system has been operational for a period and initial feedback is gathered. The correct answer is A. Conduct a Data Protection Impact Assessment (DPIA) to evaluate the risks associated with the proposed data collection and processing activities and ensure compliance with the Data Protection Act 2018 and GDPR principles before implementation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing operational efficiency with the imperative of regulatory compliance, specifically concerning data protection and customer privacy. The core tension lies in the potential for a new, seemingly beneficial process to inadvertently breach established legal and ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed improvements do not compromise the integrity of customer data or violate the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding and adherence to the UK's Data Protection Act 2018, DPA 2018, and the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR principles, which are directly applicable to Royal Mail's operations. This approach involves a proactive assessment of the proposed process against these regulations, ensuring that any data collected is necessary for the stated purpose, is handled securely, and that customer consent or a legitimate basis for processing is established. This aligns with the ethical duty to protect customer privacy and maintain trust. An incorrect approach that involves implementing the new process without a comprehensive data protection impact assessment, DPIA, would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses a key requirement under GDPR Article 35 for processing likely to result in a high risk to the rights and freedoms of natural persons. It demonstrates a disregard for the potential for data breaches, misuse of personal information, and a failure to uphold the principle of accountability. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the perceived efficiency gains without considering the data privacy implications, would also be professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the legal framework governing data handling and a failure to integrate compliance into operational planning. It risks substantial fines and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach, assuming that existing general data protection policies are sufficient without a specific review for the new process, is also flawed. While general policies are important, each new process or system requires a tailored assessment to identify and mitigate specific risks. This oversight can lead to unintended breaches. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This begins with identifying potential data protection risks associated with any new initiative. Subsequently, it requires consulting relevant legislation and guidance, in this case, DPA 2018 and GDPR. A crucial step is conducting a DPIA if the risk assessment indicates a high likelihood of risk. Finally, implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to mitigate identified risks, ensuring ongoing monitoring, and seeking legal/compliance advice when uncertainty exists are essential components of responsible decision-making.